Hello everyone, welcome back. I hope you have had a good break. My name is Hamida Azimi and welcome to Graphics Computer Applications class. This is an online class and every week I will post the material of the class on Canvas. So pay attention to the Canvas, to the updates, to the emails, and try to check your emails every day at least once. Today we are going to take a look at the material that you have to learn for the week one, and we are going to take a brief look at the syllabus of the class, and I will also talk about some other things that you have to finish before the end of our first week here. So if you go to the canvas of the class, you will see that there is a module at the beginning, and in the module there are some tutorials. If you are not familiar with the topics of those tutorials, please take a look at these tutorials. The most important part is the syllabus of the class. Uh, Please read the syllabus carefully. We will go through that really briefly today, but you have to read the syllabus carefully a couple of times and let me know if you have any question. For each week, there is a module of that specific week. For example, here you can see the module of week one. In each week, there is a part which is the overview of that week, and you have to read that carefully. All the materials of the class, they have been described here. For your first week, you have to request for the license of Adobe Creative Cloud. Probably lots of you already have that, but if not, please request it as soon as possible because it would take a couple of days for you to get that. Also, there's a discussion part for the first week that you have to introduce yourself in that. When you open that, you will see the information that is required for you to talk about. There's an assignment. The name is Bezier Game. Again, when you open that, the description of the assignment is there. And you also have to finish it by the end of our first week, which is March 15. And during the lecture I am providing, I ask a question, and this is the place that you have to type in your answer there. So if you want to take a brief look at the syllabus, and again, I want you to read it carefully several times. As I have mentioned, this is an online class. This is my email address. My office hours are Monday and Thursdays. If this office hours does not work for you, that's totally fine. You just need to send me an email and we will find another time to um, to talk and have a meeting. And this is my office. You are always welcome. In my office, your meeting doesn't have to be in person. If you feel like you prefer Zoom, we can definitely do that. But again, if you want to have a meeting with me, send me an email. We will find a time and we will decide if you want it to be in person or over the Zoom. These are other information that you're required to read later by yourself. You are required to spend at least 9 hours of working for this class. About the software, as I said, you need at the very first thing you would need would be the license, which is free for you as Bali State students. and you have to get the Adobe Creative Cloud license. Definitely, you have to make backup from your files. There's a high chance that for some reason you lose your file, the last version of your file does not work properly. So it is important to have several backups of your file. And because if you don't have a backup and you reach the deadline and you find out that you have lost your file, this is your responsibility. So losing file and not having the backup um, is the part that is in your responsibility, and you have to be careful about that. And this is not an acceptable excuse for not turning in assignments on time. For all the assignments and homeworks, please read the assignment description carefully. I also sometimes explain the assignment during my lecture time, so please listen to the description as well and carefully take note while you are listening to the lecture, and let me know if you have any question. And this is also the breakdown of the um, assignments. About submitting late, if you submit late for the first week, you will lose 3% of the grade for that assignment per day. And after the first week, if you submit your assignment, even if the assignment you have done is completely, the highest grade, the maximum grade you will get would be 80 out of 100. For your final project, if you cannot submit your final project late, in this case, your grade for your final project would be 0. Please, please, please do not use AI at all for any of your assignments. If you are supposed to write down about any specific topic as a part of your assignment, you shouldn't be worried about the grammar or your spelling. Um, so don't uh, don't force yourself to use AI for checking your text. That's totally fine with me if there are grammatical issues in your text. So please, under no circumstance, use AI and any form of AI. And these are other details that you have to read yourself. Also, the topics and the and the assignments I have put in the syllabus. Um, there's a chance that I may need to change them. If this happens, the change will be announced verbally, or I will send an announcement on Canvas, or I will send out an email to the students. So pay attention to the emails. Try to check your emails at least once per day. Check your Canvas constantly, and pay attention to the emails you receive. Here's a breakdown of the topics we are going to talk about during this 8-week class. And again, there is a chance I may need to change any of these topics or assignment or even the due dates. If this happens, I will definitely let you know. So pay attention to the notes and emails you receive from me. And again, you can find the syllabus in home in the first module, syllabus resource and tips. And this PDF is the syllabus for this class. So in today's class, we are going to talk about two main topics. graphic communications and printing and file formats. So, before the invention of printing, communication was primarily verbal. People relied on speaking to share ideas, stories, and information. While verbal communication worked well for small groups, it had several major disadvantages and limitations. First, it was difficult to communicate with large number of people. Second, it was almost impossible to communicate effectively over long distance. And finally, spoken information could easily be forgotten, distorted, or lost over time because there was no reliable way to record it. To solve this problem, humans developed graphic communication, which is the practice of communicating information and ideas through writing, images, and symbols. So, writing, image, and symbols are the main tools that humans used for graphic communication. Graphic communication is actually the most common form of art that we face in everyday life, even if we don't always think of it that way. We see it in advertisements, packaging, websites, posters, books, and social media, definitely. The history of graphic communication can be traced back to the earliest human marking, such as the drawing found on the walls of caves. These early images were used to represent animals, hunting scenes, and everyday life. Over time, graphic communication evolved as new technologies and media appeared. Today, it includes many different forms such as photography, printing, computer graphic, and digital design. Modern graphic communication is often built around three main components: typography, page layout, and logos. Typography is the art and technique of designing and arranging letter forms. It involves choosing font, adjusting, spacing, organizing text in a way that improves readability and visual impact. Page layout refers to organizing design elements on a page or screen. This includes placing text, images, and graphics in a way that guide the viewer attention and creates a clear visual hierarchy. Logos are designs that are used to identify and promote a company, organization, or brand. A well-designed logo communicates identity, value, and recognition through a simple visual symbol. The development of graphic communication went through several stages. The first stage was pictographs. There were drawings that carried meaning because the development of graphic communication went through several stages. The first stage was pictograph. Pictographs were drawings that carried meaning because they look like the object they represent. For example, a drawing of a deer might represent the animal itself. The next stage was ideographs, where drawings were used to represent ideas or concepts rather than literal objects. For example, um, a symbol that represent concept like danger, movement, power. So These examples you're seeing here, they are ideograms. And here we want to talk about phonetic symbols, which human developed later around 900 BC. The Phoenicians created symbols that represented sounds instead of objects. These symbols could be combined to form words which eventually influenced the alphabet system that we are using today. Over time, communication technologies continued to evolve. After writing and printing came modern telecommunication systems like radio, television, laptop, internet, all these things that we are using right now, and they help us to travel information instantly across the world. Now, based on all these things that we briefly talked about, the history of communication and how it evolved, what do you think about printing? What do you think the printing will be in the future? Do you think does it disappear completely? Does it stay the same? Does it um, it still stays, but the form of it changes? So this was the question that you have to answer here in this discussion part in week one. And keep that in mind, there's no right or wrong answer. Um, I just want to know your idea here. Printing is one of the most influential inventions in human history. In fact, printing has been described as the single most significant technological development in the history of the human species. Printing made it possible to record knowledge and ideas so they could survive across generations. So, do you remember in a couple of slides before this slide, we were talking about the verbal communication and its limitation? So, here we can see that the printing is kind of solving those issues. Instead of information being limited to memory or oral storytelling, it could be reproduced and distributed widely. One of the earliest examples of printing dates back to 3000 BC in Sumer, which is located in what is now Iraq. People used stone cylinder, so you can see here these stone cylinders that people and these are pretty hard, and people used these stone cylinder seals which were rolled across wet clay tablets to create repeated pattern or symbols. After the clay dried, the imprint remained permanently. However, the major breakdown in printing occurred in 1455 when John Gutenberg in Germany developed the movable type printing press. Movable type printing press allowed individual letters to be arranged, reused, and printed efficiently. Gutenberg's invention made books much cheaper and easier to produce, which helps spread literacy, education, and scientific knowledge. Because of this achievement, Gutenberg is often called the father of printing. And here you can see that the press is done manually, but for pressing on any piece of paper, they just need to put the letters on this metal, and they will add the ink, and um, after that manually they had to press the paper on that metal part, and after that we would see the result on the paper. Over time, many different printing techniques were developed. Each method has its own advantages, disadvantages, and historical context. From now on, we will talk about these methods and we will see how they are different from each other. Let's start with letterpress printing. Letterpress printing is one of the oldest printing methods. It involves a raised surface coated with ink that are pressed onto paper to transfer the image or text. This method became widely used after Gutenberg's invention in the 15th century and remained the dominant printing technology for several centuries. This method definitely has its own pros and cons. For example, for its advantages, it produces sharp and crisp text, it creates a distinctive tactile impression. Um, it creates a distinctive tactile impression on paper and it's very durable printing plates. And for its disadvantages, it is a slow compared to definitely modern methods. It's expensive for large image-based designs, and it's not ideal for full color printing. Today, letterpress is mostly used for specialty printing such as wedding invitation or artist prints. Now let's take a look at next we want to talk about offset lithography. Offset lithography is the most widely used commercial printing method today. It works based on the principle that oil and water do not mix. In this method, the image is first transferred onto the metal plate. The inked image is often transferred or offset onto a rubber blanket before finally being pressed onto paper. Offset printing became popular in the 20th century and is still widely used for printing books, newspapers, magazines, and packaging. About the advantages of offset lithography, we can talk about its image quality, very efficient for large print runs, and it is a lower cost per copy for mass printing. But it also has its own disadvantages. For example, setup cost is expensive. It's not ideal for very small print jobs and requires specialized equipment. Now let's take a look at an example of that to see how it works.
Common image reproduction methods of the modern age. But what is offset printing, and how does it work? Offset printing begins with the pre-press stage, where digital files are broken down by their color separation and are laser etched onto coated aluminium plates. Each plate is then loaded onto a roller known as the plate cylinder. Each revolution of this cylinder dampens the non-image area of the plate with water from the dampening system. A vegetable oil-based ink is then passed through a series of rollers and finally onto the image area of the plate. This image is then offset onto another cylinder with a rubber blanket. The addition of this process results in a clearer and sharper final image and is where offset printing gets its name. Paper is loaded into the start of the press and is separated by jets of air to ensure that only one piece travels at a time. The paper is passed between the blanket cylinder and the impression cylinder, where it receives the printed image before it's passed on to the next unit to receive the next color. After the page has travelled through each of the units, it is piled at the end of the press with a thin layer of powder separating each page so that the printed image can dry without marking the pages above and below. Offset printing is best suited for larger volume prints, as most of the cost is in the initial setup, and the price per print will fall as the quantity goes up. For more information, visit us at expresscards.com.au. We also have a range of videos to help you understand.
After offset printing, we want to talk about in-house printing. In-house printing prefers to print that is done within an organization or business rather than outsourcing it to a commercial printing company. Examples include office printer used for documents, presentations, and small promotional materials. The pros of these in-house printings are it is immediate printing, you have more control over production, and it's convenient for small jobs. But it has its own disadvantages. It is limited print quality compared definitely to professional presses, higher cost per page for large quantities, and limited paper and finishing objects. Finishing options. Digital printing uses digital files that are sent directly to the printer without the need for printing plates. This technology became widely used in the late 20th and early 21st century. Digital press are common for short print runs, customized printing, and print-on-demand services. The pros of these printings include fast turnaround time, no setup plate required, and it is ideal for small quantities or personalized printing. About its cons, it has higher cost per unit for large runs. It is slightly lower color accuracy than offset printing, and it has limited material mm, compatibility. Silk screen printing involves pushing ink through a mesh screen onto a surface, while certain areas are blocked to create the design. This method became popular in the 20th century and is widely used for textile poster and art print. Its advantages are it works on many surfaces like fabric, paper, plastic, wood. It produces vibrant colors and it's great for artistic and handmade products. And its disadvantages are it requires separate screen for each color. It is time consuming to set it up, and it's not ideal for highly detailed images. And here is an example of that.
In this video, I want to show you how to apply the Derivan blockout and remove the drawing fluid. So, first thing you need to do is apply a generous amount of the screen blockout. And now what you're going to do is using your squeegee, do one slow pass across the whole design. Leave the blockout to dry for 24 hours. Now you can rinse out the drawing fluid using cold water. Again, you might remember this design from another video, but it's good to see a few examples. So again, pulling the blockout medium across the design, leaving it to dry for 24 hours, and again, washing out the drawing fluid with cold water. Work gently as you remove.
The second part of our lecture today is about file formats. In this part, we want to talk about image file formats, image file compression, raster graphic, and the vector graphic, and their difference, and RGB and CMYK color. In modern graphic communication, understanding file formats and digital images is essential, especially when preparing designs for printing or digital distribution. An image file format determines how visual data is stored and organized in a digital file. Different formats are designed for different purposes, such as photography, web images, or professional printing. Common formats include JPEG, PNG, TIFF, PSD, and PDF. Each format has its own balance of quality, file size, and compatibility. But before we want to talk about the image file format, it is important to talk about image file compression. Compression is used to reduce the size of image files so they take up less storage space and load faster. We have two main types of compression: lossy compression and lossless compression. In lossy compression, it removes some images data to reduce file size. This makes files smaller but may slightly reduce the image quality. JPEG is a common example of lossy compression. In lossless compression, it reduces file size without losing the image data, so the quality stays high. In lossless compression, PNG and TIFF files are often um, using this lossless compression technique. An image file format, as we mentioned before, determines how visual data is stored and organized in a digital file. Here we want to talk about some key image file types. Let's start with JPEG. As we mentioned, JPEG is a lossy compression. It's ideal for photos, website images, and email because the file size is pretty small. PNG, as we mentioned, again, it is lossless compression, and it also supports transparency. So if you have transparency in your image and you want to keep the transparency, you have to use PNG, and it is best for web graphics and logos. SVG is a vector format, and we will talk about vector files at the end of this lecture. which is suitable for web graphics and allowing scaling to any size without losing the quality. WebP is a modern high compression format, and it offers both lossy and lossless compression, and it is suitable for web. GIF or GIF, which is an animation, and it has limited colors, but it is ideal for small, simple graphics. TIFF or TIFF is lossless, high quality format and is often used for professional printing. We also have a raw files, which is unprocessed data from digital camera. And raw files would need editing, um, and after that we have AVIF, which is the next generation high efficiency format that supports HDR and superior compression. HEIF or HEIC, if you have any of the Apple product, you definitely have seen these extension on the images. Um, this is high, this is the high quality image formats, but you have to keep that in mind. For example, if you take a photo with your iPhone, if you have a Mac, you can easily transfer it to your Mac and you can easily see the image. But if you have a Windows, after you transfer your image from your iPhone to your Windows, there should you may face an issue in seeing the images, and this file format is not standard in industry or even for the class assignment submissions. So if you want to submit any images, you have to pay attention to the format of the image. They cannot be HEIF or HEIC because we cannot see them easily on Windows or in any other devices which are not Apple devices. BMP is uncompressed Windows format and is generally high quality, but the file size are pretty large. We also have DNG, which stands for Digital Negative. It is raw image format developed by Adobe and stores the unprocessed data captured by a digital camera sensor. Because it contains more original information than standard image formats, it allows photographers to adjust exposure, color, and detail without losing the quality. And PDF, which stands for Portable Document Format, is commonly used for sharing documents and preparing files for printing because it preserves layout, fonts, and graphics exactly as how you designed it. PDF files can contain text, images, vector, and again, we will talk about vector later, vector graphics, and interactive elements all in a single document. Now we want to talk about raster graphics, and after that we will talk about vector graphics and their difference. Raster graphics are images made of a grid of tiny squares that we call pixel. Each pixel contains color information, and together they form the images. There is a video here. We will take a look at it later. And also about all the videos we will watch during the lecture time. I'm gonna put the link in the overview part so you can have access to them and you can watch them again separately by yourself. In digital imaging, a pixel is the smallest addressable physical element of an image. Pixels are arranged in a regular two-dimension grid. You can see that here. And each pixel serves as a sample of an original image, with a greater number of samples typically providing more accurate representation. So you can see here that we have pixel, each pixel has its own color, and when we take a look at the whole image, we will understand the main image that is supposed to be represented here. Each pixel possesses a specific intensity or color, often composed of 3 or 4 component intensities. And the component each pixel can carry can be RGB or CMYK. And again, RGB and CMYK are the things that we are going to talk about later today. The intensity of each pixel is variable, and in color imaging system, these components are combined to produce the wide spectrum of colors. Each pixel holds one color only. Photographs and scan images are usually raster graphics. So raster graphics are made of pixels, and photographs and scan images are mainly raster graphics. The main limitation of raster images is that when they are scaled up too much, they become blurry or pixelated. Um, Probably you have experienced that before when you download an image and you try to scale it up. The quality is not as smooth as it is supposed to be because all the information are stored in this 2 by 2 grid, and when you scale it up we are actually start to seeing the pixels but in a scaled up version. Common raster file formats are JPEG, PNG, TIFF or TIFF, and GIF or GIF. Now let's take a look at the size of each pixel. Each pixel can be 8-bit, 10-bit, or 12-bit, which determines the range of the color we can see at the end. So let's take a look at this example.
A video camera's ability to reproduce smooth gradation between colors and shades is an important factor when seeking to capture filmic images. The range of possible colors a video camera is able to capture is determined by the bit depth of the file format used for recording. All cameras record their footage as digital files. These binary digital files are compressed into pieces of data known as bits, which can either be a 1 or a 0. Video images are made up from points of color called pixels, and the specific color of each pixel is determined by mixing together different amounts of colors of red, green, and blue. Bit depth refers to the number of bits of data, 1s and 0s, used to record the color channels red, green, and blue for each pixel. With 8-bit video file formats, there are 8 bits of data storage available for each color channel. By 8 bits we mean the range of binary numbers between 8 zeros and 8 ones. That gives a variation of 256 shades per channel. The resulting combination of 256 shades per channel of red, green, and blue means there are nearly 16.2 million possible colors in 8-bit video images. For 10-bit video, numbers in the binary range yield 1024 possible shade values per channel, which is over a billion colors. 12-bit video is even crazier. 4,096 shades for each red, green, and blue for a total of 68 billion colors. Increasing the bit depth also increases the file size as more data is recorded. However, while a 10-bit video file may be 20% larger than the equivalent 8-bit file, The former will give you 4 times as many levels of color per channel. The human eye can only distinguish around 10 million colors, so in a world where display devices are 10
You can watch the full video later, and as I said, I will put the link on Canvas. But the main idea of bit depth was explained at the beginning part. Raster image file size is mainly determined by the total pixel count, which is width and height, and you have to multiply that by the color depth, which is bits per pixel. For example, if this is the file size of your image in pixel and your color depth is 24 bit, you have to multiply these together and this will be the total bits of your file size. The other type of graphic rather than raster graphic is vector graphics. Unlike raster graphics, vector graphics are created using mathematical equations instead of pixel. They are made of lines, curves, and shapes defined by coordinates. Because of this, raster graphics can be scaled to any size without losing the quality. Vector graphics are commonly used for logos, icons, and illustrations. Common vector formats are um, Illustrator files and SVG file. So here, as you remember in raster file, we said each image is um, made up of pixel and each pixel contains the information of the color. So when we scale it up, because we start to see those pixels in a scaled up version, it starts to become blurry. But in vector, because it contains it doesn't save the pixel, actually it saves these mathematical information, these dots and lines and curves. Whenever you want to scale up the image, it just scales up those information so the quality stays high. As we mentioned before, we have um, two way of showing color. One is RGB and the other one is CMYK. RGB stands for red, green, and blue, which are the primary color of light used in digital display. Screens such as cell phones, television, and computer monitors create images by combining different intensities of red, green, and blue. And because these are the primary colors, technically you should be able to create all the colors with just these three colors. And when you combine all these three colors with the same intensity together, you will be able to see the pure white color. And because of that, because you can make in all the colors with just the proper combination of red, green, and blue, RGB is the standard color system and is used for digital media and a screen. If I go back here, this is an image from a screen, and you can see that each part is made of three main colors, and the combination of these colors the combination of different intensity of each color can give us different example here, and we can create different color with different shades on a screen. On the other hand, we have CMYK, which stands for cyan, magenta, yellow, and key, which key is the black. This color is used in printing, and in CMYK, unlike RGB, in RGB we mentioned that we are mixing red, green, and blue with different intensity to create different colors. But here in CMYK, instead of mixing light, CMYK works by layering ink on paper, which absorbs certain wavelength of light and reflects the others. Because printing uses physical ink, the CMYK color range is smaller than RGB color range. And this is an example that you can see. This circle is our visible spectrum, so our eye can see all these colors in this circle. And this part, this yellow line, it defines the color that RGB system can create, and you can see that CMYK is much limited than RGB color. So, and it is really important to know the difference and the limitation of CMYK, because whenever we want to design anything and print it, we will see the color on a screen as RGB. But when we want to print that, we will print that by CMYK system. And you can see that whenever we want to print things, and you definitely have experienced that yourself, you see something on a screen, but when you print that, the color is pretty different. And that's the main reason, because in CMYK, that is a coloring system that is used in printing, it has more limitation. If I go back to the previous slide, you can see that and the colors in CMYK are more limited than RGB. So we create something digitally with RGB, and when we want to print it, it will be printed in CMYK. So there should be a um, translation that is happening here between RGB and CMYK. When a design is created on a screen using RGB color, and it is prepared for printing when it wants to print it, when it wants to be printed, we have to convert it to a CMYK. However, not all RGB colors can be reproduced with CMYK ink. Bright digital colors, especially neon green, blues, and purples, often appear duller when printed. Because of this limitation, designers often use color management tools and print preview to adjust color before sending file to print. This ensures that the final printed result is as close as possible to what was originally designed on screen. And when we get to Photoshop, we will see that in Photoshop there is a part that you can define the color mode of your file, and there is by default your the setting of your Photoshop file is on RGB, but if you want to um, prepare something for printing, you have to change your color mode in Photoshop to CMYK, and lots of the softwares have these converter inside them. And here's an example of what we see on a screen, and after that, when we print it, this will be the final result. And this is also another example. You can see that some colors, they are much brighter, much sharper, much saturated, And in CMYK YK color system, they are more duller here. And when you want to print this image, probably you will get something pretty similar to this image.